All right, let's jump right into this explainer because today we're unpacking a truly bizarre and honestly highly detailed investigation into that massive glowing object that crashed off the coast of Florida back in the summer of 2011. Now, if you were following the news back then, you probably remember the headlines. But today, we're looking at this whole event through a completely different lens. We're going to explore a documented esoteric investigation, specifically Chapter 2 of our source material, which was recorded on August 23rd, 2011. And what's wild is, this approach doesn't use radar or sonar, it uses spiritual channeling to get to the bottom of this modern mystery. Let's see exactly what this source claims actually happened that night. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Florida coast UFO crash itself, then look at some consecutive sightings over in Vietnam, how the truth was uncovered via remote viewing, the totally unexpected cause of the crash, the pilot's identity and true feelings, and finally, the ghost ship's world drift.
Okay, Part 1. The Florida coast UFO crash.
To really set the scene, we first need to look at the undeniable physical events. I mean, within a span of just 24 hours, the world witnessed two massive aerial anomalies. This gives us some very concrete dates to work with. On July 26th, this giant white glowing object visibly plunged right into the ocean off the Florida coast. It was a huge spectacle. I mean, the big three American television networks all picked it up, and naturally, the public was in a total frenzy. But what makes this timeline absolutely critical to our source's investigation is that just one day prior, an incredibly similar event was unfolding on the complete opposite side of the planet. But hey, before we travel across the globe, we gotta look at the immediate official response right there in Florida. So despite widespread eyewitness accounts and a literally wall-to-wall coverage on major networks, local authorities tried to brush this massive glowing object off with a highly mundane excuse. They claimed, and I quote, they were simply Chinese lanterns used in festivals. Right. I want you to really think about that for a second. A giant glowing anomaly crashes into the sea, triggers Coast Guard and military patrols, and it's dismissed as paper lanterns. Yeah. According to our source material, this explanation was incredibly weak, and it left the door wide open for a much, much deeper investigation. Which brings us to Section 2, Consecutive Sightings in Vietnam. To truly grasp the Florida crash, our source insists we actually have to look halfway across the globe to the events of the very previous day. On July 25th, a massive UFO was spotted hovering over Ho Chi Minh City, and footage was instantly uploaded to YouTube, creating a huge buzz online. And according to the esoteric investigation we're following here, these were not just two random, unconnected occurrences. The source states that the craft seen over Vietnam belonged to the exact same group that would go down in Florida just hours later. It was a coordinated presence, and honestly, that makes the subsequent crash all the more intriguing. Let's move on to Section 3, Uncovering Truth via Remote Viewing. So, bypassing standard physical investigations entirely, the author, Ryuho Okawa, conducted a session about a month later, on August 23, 2011, using a technique called remote viewing. When the radar and Coast Guard boats turned up absolutely nothing, he utilized a much more spiritual approach. By entering a deep meditative state, Okawa sought to project his consciousness directly to the submerged crash site. But here's the kicker. He didn't just look at the wreckage. He actually sought to channel the pilot's soul directly. This completely flips the official physical explanations on their head. Instead of analyzing twisted metal or radar pings, this investigation pulled information straight from the conscious entity who was literally behind the controls. All right, Section 4, Unexpected Cause of the Crash. You know, what this psychic investigation revealed about the crash wasn't some crazy tale of hostile engagements, interceptor jets, or advanced interstellar warfare. Actually, it was strikingly human. Let's walk through the exact sequence of events the pilot relayed during this channeling session. So his intent that night was totally peaceful. Grand, actually. The pilot basically just wanted to show off for us humans by hovering in the sky and executing a dramatic, spinning demonstration. But instead of an epic display of alien tech, the pilot made a careless operational error. A total, clumsy rookie mistake. He lost control of the craft, which led to a completely anticlimactic plunge straight into the Florida Ocean. It was, as the source describes it, an incredibly easy and totally avoidable accident. Moving right along to Section 5, the pilot's identity and true feelings. Through the channeling session, this really fascinating mismatch emerged. On paper, this pilot was highly credentialed, right? He was an elite member of the Earth Defense Force originating from Alpha Centauri. But his equipment? Well, that told a very different story. The crash was heavily influenced by the fact that this Centaurian pilot wasn't even flying his own state-of-the-art ship. He was awkwardly flying a rented, beat-up UFO that he borrowed from the Pleiadians. He just simply didn't know how to handle this unfamiliar, rundown craft, and that directly led to the botched spinning maneuver. And the way this came across was amazing. Speaking through a medium, referred to as Channeler E, in this highly approachable, almost comical tone, the pilot expressed profound embarrassment. I mean, he wasn't just upset about making a rookie error and trashing a rented ship. He was deeply self-conscious about his appearance. Because his species physically resembles primates, he knew Earthlings would look at him and just see a quote-unquote space monkey. The sheer shame of crashing, combined with the intense fear of being mocked as a space monkey, made this incredibly advanced being feel so vulnerable and regretful about the whole ordeal. So with the pilot surviving the crash as a spiritual entity, and his physical ship taking on water at the bottom of the ocean, we have to ask the obvious question. Why was he simply left behind by his comrades? Seriously, where was the interstellar rescue team?
That brings us to our final section, Ghost Ship's World Drift. The answer to that question reveals a pretty melancholic ongoing aftermath. The reality of Earth's defenses simply got in the way. Because the U.S. military and Coast Guard instantly locked down and heavily patrolled the Florida coast after the splashdown, the alien mothership just couldn't risk a rescue op. If they approached, they were terrified they'd be shot down or captured, creating a massive media spectacle. So they had to make the incredibly hard call to abandon their embarrassed pilot. His waterlogged, rented Pleiadian ship essentially became a ghost ship, caught in the ocean's currents. The remote viewing session actually tracked this drift. It moved away from the U.S. coast, floated past Europe, circled all the way down around Africa, and is currently drifting just aimlessly somewhere near the Indian Ocean.
It really leaves us with this final, bizarre thought to ponder from this esoteric text. If we entertain the findings of this remote viewing session, it completely reframes how we look at the mysteries floating in our vast oceans today. We aren't just looking for sunken treasure or lost submarines anymore. We might literally be sharing our oceans with a deeply embarrassed extraterrestrial castaway who just wanted to show off his spinning skills, but is now stuck on an endless, lonely world tour. It's a fascinating narrative that blends the cosmic with the deeply human emotion of embarrassment, and it for sure makes you look at those 2011 UFO headlines in a whole new light. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep your eyes, and maybe your intuition, pointed toward the unknown.